Hi, this is Tim at the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions concerning this watch. Today, we're discussing a 2019 evolution of the Nautilus annual calendar. This is the Patek Philippe 5726 1A-014. This is the gradient blue dial version of the long-running Nautilus annual calendar, and this is one of the earlier examples of the -14. I'll show you why in a moment, but dimensionally they're all the same. So 40.5 millimeters in diameter in stainless steel. It is 11.5 millimeters thick, and if we're just going to measure the edges of the case, and that is how I prefer to measure a Nautilus, it's 45.2 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip. Now let's throw it on my wrist so you can get a sense of how that fits on a wrist of 16 centimeters circumference. And you can really see that the lugs are nowhere near the edge of my wrist, which is why I could see this watch fitting well on a wrist even a little bit smaller. 15 centimeters circumference, you're good to go. And the watch has a sloped flank and it's fairly thin, so it will slide underneath a dress cuff. The bracelet is a lovely piece. As with every Nautilus, a big part of what you're paying for is the exterior finishing of the metal. One of the reasons that the Nautilus has always cost more than the Aquanaut is that it's a more complex assembly with more individual parts, and it has more delicate finishing requirements like this hairline bevel on the edge of the case that continues down the shoulders of the links, or the break between satin and polish on the flanks of the bezel structure. You can also see that the bracelet tapers down. The intermediate links are polished. The primaries are satinated. They're polished on their shoulders, and you can see that polished bevel running all the way down. We have removable links fixed by pins and sleeves, and Patek's reason for this is that you cannot accidentally strip out a pin sleeve system, so there's no danger of you stranding a link. On the other hand, you will need a block and punch if you wish to size this at home. Now you can see the use of spring-loaded ceramic pin snaps. Those are there to ensure that over time the clamshell lock will not be able to wear down the pin snaps. That's the idea, that it will always have a snappy tolerance due to the presence of those ceramic spring-loaded balls. But you can see that this is the original clasp. Sometime probably in 2022, certainly in 2023, the -14 model transitioned to the new clasp, which features micro adjusts and a different closure mechanism. This is the original clasp as featured on the Blue Dial -14 when it launched back in 2019. So you can see there is a difference in the way the clasp is built. There's no difference in the way the case is made. Screw-down crown, and despite the through case fittings and the pushers for the calendar, it's still 120 meters water resistant, or if you go by Patek's new rating system, a true 30 meters. But there is no doubt that compared to something like a 6119, they might both be rated at 30 today. This, with the screw-down crown and a robust case, is in reality much more water tolerant. Taking a look at the dial, we have white gold hands and white gold indices, so they will never tarnish or oxidize or discolor over time. The watch is well loomed, and it's easy to see in the dark. Now, one feature that I always considered to be a higher evolution of the Nautilus relative to the predecessor Royal Oak. Of course, Gerald Gent designed both of them, the Oak in 72 and the Nautilus in 76. Well, the Oak has a rounded octagonal bezel, but the inner bezel, crystal, and dial are all round, whereas here, outer bezel, inner bezel, crystal, and dial, they are all the same rounded off polygon, which I really appreciate. I think this is a more fully realized design. Now we have a gradient blue on the dial, which means it's sort of silver blue at the center, almost black navy blue at the edge. We have the lateral striations that are a longtime Nautilus signature. It is an annual calendar, something Patek Philippe created in 1996. They made the first. It is an aperture style annual, so you have the day, the date, the month. You've got a Moonphase. The calendar only needs to be corrected once a year during the jump from February to March. The Moonphase doesn't have to be touched for 122 years. We also have this 24-hour dial that lets you know, for example, whether you are looking at 10:16 in the morning or at night. And you can see that we're well past 2100, so this is 10:16 at night. Now, the reason that's there is not because they think you might get confused, but because it tells you when not to use these pusher correctors to adjust the calendar. If you are in the nighttime hours, you want to roll through the turn at midnight and then advance to 6:30 in the morning before you use these calendar correctors on the annual calendar system. Now around back, we've got the long-running caliber 324. Of course. This one turns an annual calendar complication, but mechanically it's like most 324s of the current era. Unidirectional automatic winding with ceramic bearings, 45-hour power reserve, 4 Hz beat rate, 6-position adjusted, 34 joules. It's got a free-sprung Gyromax style balance system and an anti-magnetic Spiromax silicone hairspring. It's also nicely finished, mechanically started but manually executed in the final pass. It does a much more convincing impression of full hand finish than, say, JLC, FP Journe, or even Audemars Piguet for that matter. So this is very handsome and worthy in a watch like this. The one feature it really doesn't have is hacking seconds. That is one feature the 324s do not include. Though you know that there is a hack on these center second 324s where a little bit of back pressure can be used to stall the hand wherever you want to stall the hand on the dial. That's very easy to do. So if you really want to set this thing to the second, it can be done. If you love this watch, reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.